Hello, hello. I just got back from an amazing trip to Vienna and also Budapest. And one thing that I love to do when I get back from a trip is to make a little travel journal spread of, what the things that I saw, my favorite places I went, food that I ate, so on. Just a little recap of the trip. It's my visual travel journal, if that makes sense. So I figured that I would kind of talk through how I approach those as I make my Vienna spread today, in case anybody else is interested in doing something similar. Okay, so I started this spread on the plane home, which was a great way to keep myself awake on a long flight. But so while I'm away, I like to take a lot of photos and videos of both the places that I visit while I'm there, but also just kind of anything that catches my eye or anything that stands out about the trip or that makes it more fun or special. So while this could be the more typical kind of buildings, landscapes, food, we went to this museum and saw this, obviously those are amazing highlights of a trip. It could also be a cute dog or the view from a train or so on, So last year I went to Portugal, and in my travel spread from Lisbon, which I'll link below in case you want to see it, one of our hotels had these really fun mismatched tiles and numbers to mark each room number. And I included that in my spread because I really liked it, and it's very weirdly something that stands out from that trip for me. So that was kind of the perfect thing to include along with everything else. So for Vienna, some of the most standout sites we visited were some of the palaces and their grounds. If you don't know, Vienna has a lot of palaces, so many. Schönbrunn, which is the one on the left, has a surprisingly large zoo attached to it, and our day there included walking around the zoo, a palace tour, dinner, a concert. It was just all an amazing day that was just so fun and involved a lot of really cool sights. So that was definitely one of my favorite parts of this trip, and I knew that had to be in here. We also got to see the horses of the Spanish riding school, which were really cool. We saw Belvedere, which is the palace on the right side of the page, which was also beautiful. I had to include apple strudel because it was everywhere in Vienna. We ended up having it 3 separate times, and we didn't even really mean to. So that had to be in here. The wine is the specific Viennese wine that they make. So anyway, while I'm in these places that I'm visiting, I collect these photos along the way, both for myself and also to use as references later, either on their own in their own painting or to put in a travel spread. Once the trip is over, I'll look back and think about, what stood out to me, what were my favorite things that we did, or some of the best places we saw, and then I'll take a piece of each of those things and do a little sketch to think about how I can fit them all together. And thinking about, whether I want to emphasize certain ones or how the different pieces can kind of puzzle together. In this case, I knew, obviously, the palaces are pretty big on the page. They're very ornate, and I knew I kind of wanted to show that, and I needed to give myself room to work with that. And they're also both very different, so I thought it could kind of be cool to have them both be kind of the main attraction. So that's kind of how I approached this one. I also often have trouble deciding what I have to leave out because there's just so much that you want to include sometimes. You know, we went to this really cool art museum while we were there, and I didn't end up putting the zoo in here anywhere. And I didn't do any of the other, you know, Viennese dishes that we had. One thing that I wanted to fit in here but couldn't was this rooftop bar that we went to, where we were there at sunset and we had an almost 360-degree view of the city and the river, and it was just so cool and so incredible. I couldn't believe that this bar was not more crowded. Like, we were not alone, but we had our whole section to ourselves, and it was just incredible. And I almost tried to squeeze that in here, or I decided whether I wanted to do that or the train down to Budapest, but I ended up going with the train because that was also really cool, and it was really fun to see how the landscape changed as we got out of the city and into the countryside. So you kind of have to figure out what you want to prioritize in the spread, but it all ends up working out in the end. And you can always make another if you want. So, for Vienna, all of the buildings are so ornate and beautiful, and I knew I wanted to, as I said before, paint the two palaces. And I also knew that that was going to be kind of a challenge because I don't usually have the patience for super ornate architecture. So this was another thing that I like doing about these travel spreads, is that they often push me to paint things that I wouldn't necessarily tackle on my own. I do definitely gravitate towards landscapes a lot, and that is definitely not the city. So that was kind of a cool thing, that was kind of a cool bonus to making this. After I get the layout settled, I'll start the actual sketch in my sketchbook. So this is in my Etcher Perfect sketchbook. It's on cold press paper. It's 100% cotton, and this is one of my favorite sketchbooks. After the sketches are done, I'll go in and ink anything that I want line work on. So I had kind of decided previously that I did want to use ink to outline these, and that I would go through and just kind of go at it. So I'll do that first. Obviously, then you have to wait for it to dry. Then I'll go in and actually paint. So I usually try to keep the colors close to the actual references. I could try to create a more cohesive palette, I suppose, but I kind of like that they often end up looking a little all over the place and a little chaotic. I think the yellows in this one definitely clash. And you know what? That's fine. So I don't try particularly hard to make them more cohesive on these spreads, but you can if you want, of course. However, it's your journal, you can do whatever you want. And then in the end, I have a spread that serves as a really fun reminder of the places that I've been and seen, and I really, really love that. I do keep a separate travel journal that is more of an actual journal, but I like being able to create an artistic representation of my trips as well. And also, I feel like the process of doing these spreads really kind of makes me reflect back on, how fun of a trip it was. It kind of cements these views in my mind, and I remember them clearer later because, I've spent so much time with these references and with these memories. So I really like that as well. So that is how I approach my travel journal spreads, at least at the moment. if you have your own version of a travel journal, I would love to know what you do or how you choose to remember your trips. I know everyone's different. Some people scrapbook, some people draw, some people draw and also write in the same journal. Some people just have a photo album. Some people don't do anything at all. But if you have some sort of way that you like to keep your travel memories together, I would love to hear about it. That's fascinating to me. Also, let me know if you've been to Vienna, and if yes, what your favorite parts of your trip were. If you want to go to Vienna and you have any questions about it, I mean, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I'm happy to try. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it really helps out the channel. And that's all for now. I will see you in the next one.